Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up Funded. My name is Morgan McClintock, and I'm joined today by Chris Ulbrich. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, and I'm excited today because we have Aaron Cannon, who is the co-founder and CEO of Outset. They're an AI-moderated research platform. They've just closed their Series A, so we're looking forward to finding out how did that deal get done.
Yeah, it's a really, really impressive company. I think every startup, it's the dream to create your own category. And these days, everyone's looking for ways to apply AI in a way that's not just a feature. You know, you always hear about VCs looking at startups saying, well, okay, you're just basically reskinning an LLM here. You know, what Outset has done is they're really creating a bona fide platform with a defensible technological moat. They've made incredible strides in just a few years with customers and partners and with investors. So looking forward to hearing more about how they did that.
Yeah, it's a company that's come out of Y Combinator. So I'm going to ask him, how did that set them up for the seed and then the Series A? They closed their Series A with 8 VC. Why did they go with 8 VC? Let's ask a little bit about that. So please join me in welcoming Aaron Cannon, the CEO of Outset, to Fired Up Funded. Fired Up Funded, how startups closed their deals. Aaron, hi. Welcome to Fired Up Funded. It's great to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. So just the sort of top of the show here, perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about Outset. Give us the elevator pitch.
Well, Outset is the world's first AI moderated research platform used by brands like Microsoft, Nestle, and Weight Watchers. But then you might be wondering, what does AI moderated research mean? But if you're not part of the industry, it's totally okay. The research world does a massive amount of work to just try to understand humans. It's how we build good products for them, how we test new designs. It's how we understand what people need and emergent behaviors. And so we do that traditionally through things like one-on-one interviews or focus groups, which are very expensive. They're very time consuming. They only scale so much. You'll maybe do 30 interviews. It'll take you 3 weeks to run them and 2 months for the project. And what we allow is AI to moderate those conversations. So AI can one-on-one talk to hundreds or even thousands of people in a matter of a day or two, and then synthesize all that data for you. And that's why these massive global brands use us to really accelerate their ability to gather that kind of research.
If you're being interviewed by Outset, what is that like?
It is basically where AI is presenting you questions with a voice as well as text, and you're responding with your video, your voice, even your screen share, right? So you can actually share your recording of your screen, all of that back and forth. Now, we at times got asked, like, are you going to build an avatar where there's like a AI, generated face asking you questions? We did this research. We asked participants. They don't want that. So this is not a place where it has to look like a human, but it's rather about the intelligence of the follow-ups, the probing. As you hear people, how do you play it back and dig deeper? That's the real magic here.
So, yeah, I'm curious about that user experience because I did wonder if there was any video avatar either in the platform or planned for the platform. It sounds like that's not the case. If the interviewee is not seeing anything, does that make the quality of the voice that you're using more important? Because it sounds like you want to establish a sort of trusted relationship. You want the interviewee to feel like they can share.
Ultimately, what the participant sees is text and they hear voice, right? So those are the two modalities they're receiving. Now, there's a question of if you add AI as a avatar, would that increase comfort or would that decrease comfort? Turns out today, so far, it would decrease comfort. And so actually, the way to build more rapport and trust is to acknowledge that this is AI, be upfront about that, never deceive anyone, and say, hey, this is a computer asking you questions, but the questions are going to be really high quality. And I'll actually add another layer to this. We did a set of research, of course, using Outset, to understand kind of how people think about an AI interview versus a human one. And what was interesting is, while the human one had elements that were unique, right? You had a human connection. You had someone named Morgan or Chris on the other end of this, call that you could kind of bond with in some way. There was a bunch of reasons that wasn't as good, where now I'm feeling judged by Morgan and Chris, or I want to answer in a way that I'm like, I want to give the right answer. I'm giving air quotes here.
Right.
Like the right answer, right? So the ability to be almost anonymous with this computer elicits more sharing in a bunch of respects. And so we've done, Weight Watchers, for example, has done lots of weight loss research, right? And Nestle has done lots of food research, which taps into kind of deeper experiential and backgrounds and what motivates them. We've done a lot of very sensitive studies and we've seen really impressive results because it's not a human.
Right. So people are maybe counterintuitively more willing to open up to an AI.
That's right, because it doesn't have all of those things that we build into this kind of like human to human contacts, right? So I actually think there's look, I mean, I'm not saying that human-led interviews don't have a huge role to play. I think they do, but there's cross currents on both sides where you could uncover things you wouldn't be able to uncover by using AI. But then the most important thing is you're able to run it at a speed and scale that, of course, is never possible with human-led interviews.
Yeah, I think with so many research platforms, they're most of them I think are positioned as survey platforms. And
Yeah.
if anything, I'm sort of curious how you think about Outset. Is it sort of like an AI powered focus group platform, or is it somewhere in between a focus group platform and a survey platform? Are you able to get normalized data through this, given that the AI can sort of take its own path through the interview?
I'll start with you can absolutely get normalized data because we include or incorporate the ability to ask quantitative questions in the middle of all of these qualitative questions. Or in fact, think about it like you could have AI ask a multiple choice question. They say, oh, my answer is C. They hit C. Great. But now AI can dig into why. Why is that? How does that line up with everything you already told me? Right. And that's the thing we don't get with surveys. Surveys are just kind of flat data. There is no texture to them. You don't get depth. You don't get the why. And by the way, you don't quite know what's going on behind the scenes if they're just like clicking, clicking, clicking. So you just aren't getting that richness of data. So to answer your bigger question, is this more of a AI-powered survey or an AI-powered focus group? Okay, so my prediction for the category, so I'll go high level. What I believe is that we are going to be, over time, forgetting about this notion of quant versus qual, right? That this distinction is born of just a capability difference, right? Quant means you can package it into an automated or kind of scalable, click one button and send it off. And qualitative is where you have to talk to someone, right? And if we just break down all the economics of qualitative to make it just as scalable as quantitative, you start wondering, it's not about choosing quant or qual. It's about saying, what is my question and how do I get the answer? And so I think with the interesting, maybe counterintuitive change that AI moderated research will bring to the industry is that it will break down the silos between quant and qual. There are literally different teams and different budgets at a lot of organizations. That seems crazy. The whole thing you need is to answer your question. It doesn't matter what methodology you bring or whatever. So anyways, that's my broader take on the industry. For Outset, I think we sit right in the middle between surveys and interviews. It is a net new methodology. When I'm talking to a customer and they're saying, well, what exactly does it replace? I say, it's a new method. Think about it like any new method, right? It will, of course, replace some of your surveys where you actually need more depth. It'll replace some of your interviews where you need a lot more scale. It will actually allow you to do more projects when you couldn't do them before because it was too expensive. And so it can ultimately, it's a robust thing that will apply across your portfolio, but it is a new methodology.
So the AI helps guide the questions. How do you make sure that it's sort of it doesn't just go off on a tangent? We were reading through the site a little bit, and I know you've got this, you can grade that somehow. You have a thing called abyss mode where it'll go super deep. But tell us a bit about what that means and how it actually works.
We are not a black box where you say, hey, AI, I want to go learn what people think of this concept. And then AI figures it all out and then hands you an answer. Now, one day, there may be more of those options. But today, and where we really focus is being a partner to researchers or folks that do research. And what that means is that folks that do research can log into our platform and set up an interview and actually pepper it with instructions, have it skip questions, go to that question, dig really deep if they mention anything about that. But I'm speaking in terms of instructions. And so people can really imprint their own direction, almost like you would pretend the AI is like an intern doing the moderation, right? Give it very precise instructions of where and when to do what. And add to your call out, you can set how much probing, how deep do you want it to go? And that's where you have a few levels, including a standard probing and a deep probing. And then we launched a new one And we couldn't come up with a product name that is like a word deeper than deep without changing the meaning of deep in our system. So we launched Abyss Mode, which is where actually we'll spend like 6 or 7 minutes on a single question. And that's great for something like a journey. Tell me about your weight loss journey, kind of beginning to end. Like, where are you today? And AI will probe on every step to really dig and understand. Whereas a standard probing might be like, what do you think of this concept? They say, I like it. And AI will say, well, why do you like it? Yeah, I like the color. What about the color do you like? And then we're done. Right? So you can kind of see that there's different styles and different directions of how AI can probe.
Right. So you're setting up the sort of framework of, here are my questions. If they say this, skip that, generally the direction, and then also sort of how much it should push. And we've already established that actually people are quite willing to share perhaps more with an AI than normal. So sort of in this Abyss mode, they can go 7 minutes on my whole weight loss journey and really open up, and you get a lot of rich data. But the secret here is you're getting it from hundreds, thousands of people quickly because it's able to just run those in parallel, right?
That's right. And I'll add, like, I think there's an immense amount of control that you have over that AI moderator. And so you make it your own, you build it out, and then you run it. But to your point, you can absolutely scale this not only to a large number, but you could also scale it across markets. And a really common application is using it across countries. Because a magical thing about an AI moderator is it is multilingual, right? So that means you set it up in English, and you can have it run in German, French, Swedish, Russian, whatever, kind of the 50 biggest languages around the world. And all of that data, we take all of that, we translate it back, and we do the analysis, all of the analysis of all the data across those countries back in English. And so a huge unlock for a lot of our customers has been that ability where your research team is located in the US and you want to do research in Japan and nobody on your team speaks Japanese. Your options are to not do the research, which is actually a really common one, or you're hiring in-market moderators, which is really expensive. It's like $30K for like a single moderator and translation service for a single study. You wind up really paying a lot for a single market.
On that note, one of the things that really struck me about Outset is that for a Series A company, you seem to have a remarkably mature set of both customers and partners to be able, sure, technically, you can operate in any language around the world, but having survey boards or panels available in different markets, which it sounds like you do, you're only about 3 years old, right? And yet you have customers like Nestle and Weight Watchers, and you're operating, it sounds like, globally. That's remarkable. I mean, how did you get to scale that fast?
I appreciate that. I think we started, we were both went full time about 2.5 years ago, so not even 3. We built this first prototype. We had this kind of serendipitous kind of relationship with Weight Watchers where we ran a study with them. It was their pilot. It was kind of a little bit of a pilot for ourselves too. And it worked really, really well. And I think that like we were all surprised a bit. Like I would never have admitted it at the time, but we were all like, holy crap, people really share stuff. It's really useful data. And a bit of AI synthesis, which we barely even had at the time, helped unlock basically the ability to scale. Because you can scale up and then you can take all that data and help scale it back down, what you really need to know. So that was our jumping off point. And what we learned from that was that larger organizations like a Weight Watchers, bigger brands that have presence all over the world, right? Their need for good, scalable, deep research was exponentially larger, right? It was consistent, large, widespread, and that just drove us to focus on that. Startups also do research, but it's sporadic. It has different sets of needs. Often it's customer development while you're doing research. I mean, it's a very different thing to go solve for startups. So we decided, let's go all in on enterprise. And then I think we made a couple of early good decisions around pricing and packaging and how we approach them. My co-founder, who's the CTO, made some really good decisions about architecture and data or infrastructure such that we can, get through Microsoft security reviews, which are no joke, right? So, we just kind of set ourselves up to do it.
Mm.
And I think we also were like the innovators in the space. And now, I'm not even sure if I should share this. It's kind of odd thing to say, but like today I was talking to like a Fortune 500 company who said, looking at you guys are the safe choice for AI moderated research. We're a 2.5-year-old company and we're safe. So like now again, I'm like, I'm a little like hesitant about that because you never want to be the safe choice. But like at the same time, what that represents for us is that like we've so established that we are synonymous with the category, that we've been battle tested, that we've been used, that if I mean, you go to any conference and you talk to people who have been using AI moderated research. If we're not the one they've used, then they've at least like know us very well, right? So recently at a conference, like talking about with a bunch of leaders talking about AI moderated research, I heard from folks that were there that like they talked about it in the terms of Outset, not the broader category, not the broader industry, but rather Outset synonymous with the category.
Right. So you guys have got a good groundswell of adoption and people are talking about you because it is a new kind of way of surveying people and combining quantitative and qualitative. So let's just talk a little bit about the Series A. You closed Series A, $17 million, led by 8VC. Congratulations. So just tell us a little bit about how that deal came about.
So the way the deal came about was ultimately like we started the year. Things were on a tear. Like we just had a lot of people adopting us, a lot of new enterprises were being onboarded. And we started just like kind of popping our heads up a little bit and talking to a few investors. And we found that like, hey, there's some interest here. There's some excitement. We've been heads down building this thing, but the reality is the market is interested in the category. And what's interesting is there's a bit of a side note, but like earlier on when we were raising our seed round right after Y Combinator, the thing to overcome with investors is like, is this an investable category? Right? And that's a question where the people are going to say, is this a category where we can have big outcomes? There could be a big winner. There's big change happening. And that was a harder one. Now, we raised it, and I'm happy to talk about how Y Combinator kind of helped us through that seed round process. I'll come to that right after this. But when we popped our heads up at the beginning of this year and started hearing from investors, that wasn't the issue anymore. But as we talked to them and shared our progress and shared what we were all about, the question, like that was no longer a huge hesitation. That actually people started to buy into this, and I'll explain like the key theory here, which is like research is a $140 billion industry. It's big. And a huge portion of that industry is purely like human-led research. It is labor intensive. It is time spent by people who have to go trudge through just normal logistics of research. And that an investor looks at that and says, actually, AI can create a huge amount of impact here, both in expanding the market, because now anybody can access research, or basically make more productive, more effective all that time that humans spend doing the manual work. And so it flipped from is this an investable category or as exciting of a category to this is an exciting category with AI. And I'd like to think that we played a small part in helping shift that narrative. So anyways, popped our heads up, started hearing from investors, started like getting some positive feedback, and took some introductions from some of our existing investors who are wonderful and supportive, and many of whom continued to contribute to our Series A. One existing investor introduced us to Jack from 8VC. We hit it off. We had a few great meetings. One thing led to another, and here we were. I guess the one side story is during fundraising, which, as we were deep in these conversations, of course, very busy. I was kind of out there talking to folks, and it was crazy. And I'd scheduled this one trip with my wife and kid to go see my parents in St. Louis. And of course, that's when the final meeting was booked. And so I spent 2 days in St. Louis and flew on back and got to pitch it. And I joke with my wife of like, if we hadn't have closed that one, then would we all be very sad that I missed that trip? But we're all happy now, and it all worked out.
Congrats. So Jack Muscovich is the partner at 8VC, and he's a great guy. Tell us a bit about, this is an expanding space. It was a question of who's going to win the space. Obviously got momentum behind this company, but just overall, why is 8VC the best partner for you?
So when you're in the market and you're talking to investors, everybody will pitch why the firm is great. Ultimately, what matters way more than that is the person you're talking to, is Jack for us in this case. And I think 8VC is a fantastic firm, and we've gotten to know a lot of folks there. Their offices are beautiful. That was awesome, like right on the water, and just like lovely and just like incredibly thoughtful versus other conversations that might feel more everybody's asking the consensus questions that an investor should ask at this stage, right? Or kind of everybody's following the hype cycles and waves. I felt like there was an intellectual rigor from everybody I talked to there that was just first principles, constructing this market, constructing what we've done, asking the why, digging into it in a way that I like really appreciated. But I would say like Jack so quickly understood what we were trying to build and the future that was possible. It's like rare that you kind of like that quickly in that first conversation that he can kind of be like that. Oh yeah, I get that. I'm a person who I actually love being interrupted. It's a weird trait of mine it just means that we're so on the same page that you get what I'm saying, and I don't even need to finish the sentence, and you get it, and you're on to like the next question and what we're doing. And it's like a funny thing. It's an odd trait. Most people don't like being interrupted. I really like it. And like he very quickly, we just interrupted each other to like get to like, okay, but why that? Okay, that's it. Now this. And it just like built on itself to a point where we developed a lot of shared vision, a lot of shared kind of passion. And ultimately, like we just got on really well. That's just going to matter so much to build that trust and have a sense of integrity that like as you're building a kind of 10-year partnership with someone, those intangibles, that sense of connection, understanding with the human, not the firm, is actually a really, really big part of it.
Massive. And how did you meet him? Did he reach out to you or his team reach out to you?
We were introduced by our mutual friend, Chris Howard. He runs Ritual Capital, who's one of our investors. And Chris is a good friend of mine. And he was like, hey, you guys should meet. It was a totally serendipitous. I hadn't asked Chris for it. He just like thought that we should meet. And so
and he was right. Congrats.
Sometimes that story is just, how it goes.
So I want to circle back to something you quickly touched on earlier, because you're a Y Combinator company. You came through that program. Tell us a little bit about graduating out of that program, then going for the seed. How do you think that helped set the company up to close the seed? And then obviously it's gone on to the A.
So I mean, we could spend an entire episode here talking about Y Combinator. I think there's a lot of debate about whether one should do it for a lot of reasons. I'm a huge believer. I've worked at 2 different Y Combinator companies before. My best friend from childhood who was a part of Y Combinator, it's been so around me that I was like, it's an obvious choice. But ultimately coming from it like really comes down to like the community you build, the brand cachet you kind of get as a part of it, and then some of what it really pushes you to do. So it's like you're incredibly productive and focused and maniacally gunning for your goals and for what you're going to build. And like you say, it's going to take me 2 weeks to do this, and say, why not 2 days? What would it take? And you just are like, shit, I don't have a good reason why not. Right. And so like it pushes you, the brand, the community, all those are important. But the other thing that it does is it sets you up to raise money really well at the end of Y Combinator. You could be a great company or a middle of the road company. And if there are 10,000 investors looking at every one of those companies, some set of them are going to be excited about what you're doing. And already investors can feel comfortable because they've been pre-vetted, right? These are pre-vetted founders. And then it's all eyes on you in a very limited time frame. One of the challenges of fundraising is that time horizons are complicated. I, as a founder, don't want to spend 3 months, 5 months, 6 months fundraising. It's a distraction. At the same time, VCs have a lot of time. I mean, unless it's a competitive, deal, they don't have that time pressure. So there's a weird kind of structure to the market. And what Y Combinator brings is focus. So Y Combinator has demo day. And then for 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, that's when they encourage having all these investor conversations. That's become a whole thing. So now you get reached out to throughout Y Combinator. You organize all of these conversations, all these pitches. You refine it. The partners help you. Gary Tan was our partner, and he was wonderfully helpful, both in that round and Series A. He was a huge, huge help in Series A and helping us. And I'm happy to talk about that too. So ultimately, we went through it. We found some amazing partners. Our lead was Adverb. That's April Underwood and Jessica Verley's fund. They are wonderful partners. They're like absolutely what you want out of a seed partner. Like they were just like willing to just roll up sleeves with us at every step of the way. And we got on great with them. And so we're like, great. And so that worked out. But then ultimately, this set us up. So having that capital, of course, set us up to start building a small team, start investing in growth, start investing more in product development. That was a great jumping off point. But it also helped us connect with some incredible investors, right? That would later go on to help us through the next fundraising round. Just having people in your corner, just having folks that have seen this when you haven't, can see around some corners for you. Gary Tan was helpful. Adverb folks were helpful. Jack Altman was helpful. So you have incredible people in our corner that have helped along the way.
Yeah, going back to your customers, and we were talking about the maturity of the company, and you mentioning how within just less than 3 years, you're already synonymous with the whole category. I mean, to what extent do you think the support you've received from your investors has helped you get the word out?
I wouldn't think about it as much as getting the word out, but every step of building a startup is full of thousands of landmines that I don't know exist. And by the way, I'm stepping on a lot of them, right? We are stepping all over landmines. But if investors can either help you dodge some or help you build a little bridge over some.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is about growth and marketing. And I think I'll give you an example. Adverb, our first ever live events where we wanted to invite researchers, we didn't know what to do. So Adverb helped out. They like co-hosted the event. They helped us find a location, and we were just like trying to figure it out. Now, events is a huge part of our growth strategy, right? So I think it's more about how important they've been throughout the like
Mhm.
building journey, not just tactically, also just psychologically, right? Just like having folks that have
Right.
done it before that can like kind of say, okay, what you're sensing now is like an instinct to really listen to, or what you're sensing now is like totally normal, and building a company's hard. Deal with it, right? Like hearing that is actually really
Hmm.
helpful. I think that's played a really big role.
So, as you went into the fundraising, what did you learn about the process that you maybe didn't
Yeah,
know going in?
I have a lot of learnings. So when you're going into fundraising, even if investors are approaching you, right, whether or not whatever the power dynamic that starts, everything you do is storytelling, particularly Series A. Let's focus on Series A because I think in later stages, metrics, there's a bit more, call it expectations around metrics, and kind of like people use that to determine investability of a business more, right? If you think about proportionality, it's like at seed, you're looking at 90% of the founders and 10% anything else. At Series A, it starts being a mix of founders, metrics, market. It's like a bigger mix. And then in Series like D, it's all about metrics, right? And to some degree, market. So in Series A, everything is storytelling, right? And I didn't quite learn this right away. Like at first, I was kind of like, well, there's a story about our business, but I'm going to ask you questions about your firm. I'll tell you about our metrics. I'll give you a data room, which we ultimately did for investors who are farther along with to like share the data. And I think what I got wrong is like it's all part of the story, right? Even the order in which your data room is structured, right? What's at the top? What's at the second? What's the third? What is it labeled? And like, how do you make the data, whether it's in slides or in sheets or whatever it is, make it digestible, make it something that fits the narrative? Again, not changing numbers to be clear. The numbers are the numbers, but like, how do you tell it together in a coherent way? Even the questions you ask of the investors, thinking about how does that present you? Does it present you as more inquisitive and particularly intellectual, or does it present you as like a novice at this? I mean, it's all part of this just kind of storytelling. I think the other piece is assume that your first story isn't perfect. Now, one thing that's really hard is like if you have back-to-back pitches for weeks, like you just do not have headspace to make iterations. But at the same time, if you can create a little bit of space, whether it's the weekend or a lull or whatever it is, to say, okay, what have I been hearing? What is landing? What's not? And how do I make this better? So assuming your first pitch is the best pitch is wrong. And I learned a ton through as I was talking to APC and others of what was really resonating and where maybe I had to explain a lot more. And so maybe the story got lost, or what were the questions that were always coming up and how do we preempt them? Like those kinds of things. So I always I try to recommend that as well.
Yeah, so it sounds in a way like you were discovering your story by telling your story, and you were discovering it in the process of going through this. And I'm curious, what, if any, is there some aspect of your story that you now regard as just absolutely critical that you weren't aware was so important when you started, but by going through it, you found, oh, this is what people need to understand, or this is the way I need to frame it?
Without getting too much in the weeds, I don't know if there's a great specific example. What I would say is what matters to the business matters before the raise and after the raise. That doesn't change. What are your growth levers? What's the big opportunity, et cetera? What you're learning is like how to talk to different kinds of people about that, about what matters. So it's not changing what matters. As I iterated, it didn't change like our priorities, but like it changed how I talked about the market, for example. Actually, okay, here's an example. I thought going into it that there was going to be more hesitation about the category. Turns out there really isn't. So I started my whole story of like, here's the industry. Here's why this is a big opportunity.
Hmm.
And people are like, okay, I get it. Keep going. I was like, okay, I can do way better then. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about what we were building towards, or let's talk about our traction, or let's talk about the pieces that are really specific to us and why we matter more than getting someone over a kind of theoretical intellectual hump. And so I think that was like an example of a learning very quickly, where it's just like, you just got to figure out what matters to your audience. The truth is, it's like sales. I am a VP of product turned salesperson, and I didn't know what I was doing. And like, I think probably my first year of pitches were probably pretty bad. You're just figuring out what resonates, figuring out what they care about. And as you learn what they care about, they being the audience or the person you're talking to, you refine what you say.
So you've closed the funds, you've got a great group of investors and a great lead here in 8VC. What are you planning to do with these funds as you sort of map out the next 6, 12, 18 months?
What we're doing with the funds. So I would say we are at a very, very important moment in this industry. Basically, what you have is a new category has emerged. A year and a half ago, nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. Now, everybody does. You talk to any researcher, they know what AI moderated research means. So now the industry knows about this. And so we have this window, right? There's an amazing window here to continue to be synonymous with the category, to be like driving growth. And basically, if we assume the industry is going to broadly adopt this, which now is a safe assumption, then it is our limited window to go after it. Now, in 2 years, 3 years, most big companies will adopt something in this category. Great. Then it's going to be a different game. Then the game is going to be, why are we better? And like kind of competition between different winners. I expect we will all get there. But during this period is a really important opportunity for all of us at Outset to like go out after this kind of seed change and continue to push it as opposed to receive it, right? Push the change, talk to people, help get them over their hesitations or skepticisms, whatever, to see the value and to adopt it with us. And so what does that mean for investment? That means building out our team in really 2 categories, growth and building the product.
Yeah.
And so we've already hired several new sales folks. We've hired CSNs. We're hiring another one right now. We're hiring marketing folks to basically build a bigger and more successful customer base, right? And one that keeps growing over time. And on the other side is our product is really, really good right now and also could be amazingly better. I mean, there's like an endless amount of possibilities. And we are working on the AI research platform for the industry. And so everything that means is something we should be building, right? And that's everything from like, I'll give you a few things, like fun things we're working on. It's like, we're building usability research, which is where you're having people kind of interact with prototypes or sites. We've already launched that. That works really well. But what we're working on is like giving AI sight, giving it vision, right? Allowing AI to see what people are doing and react to it. You said that onboarding flow is easy, but you click 17 different places. Why is that, right? You can start watching somebody's using their camera on their phone and they show their pantry. And we can categorize that and say, oh, it's interesting. You have 2 different kinds of ketchup in your pantry, right? Why is that? And again, if you're thinking through Nestle's lens, right, that matters. So more vision is a huge part of this. I think more the evolving nature of synthesis. So today it's like you gather your data, right? We gather all this data and we tell, here's what your data tells you. But there's a lot more there. So there's everything from what does our data suggest we should go do with it, right? How does it tell us what products we should go build? What features we should change? What is our problems? So there's kind of bringing it more to the world of helping businesses make decisions. There's also bringing it to the like, data is not a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. How do you store it and have a repository and make sense of that data over time to pull out what you need? I mean, it's amazing. Like researchers will do a study that like somebody studied it 2 years ago, but you're like, I don't really know what they learned. And like, maybe there's some slides somewhere. It's like, well, what if you just ask the AI agent, hey, I want to go learn this. AI says, oh, we already did a study. Here's the results. Here's what you should take from it. But also there's some stuff you haven't learned yet. Here's a button, click that. And now we're going to run another study just to fill that gap, right? You're kind of imagining that. So there's more memory. So there's kind of this like evolving nature of synthesis where it becomes the voice of your customer. It's because of all the power of AI, it can really be the voice of your customer. It can synthesize lots of data, pull out little bits everywhere, speak in the voice of your customer. So there's like building a real voice of the customer. And the last leg of the stool I'll mention is just access and democratization, which is to say, today, research tends to be pretty focused on the kind of core research team. Now, other people may do research, right? That happens. Everybody kind of turns a blind eye to that because it may not be done very well, or it's kind of inconsistencies, or you may not want to know that that's happening. But ultimately, everybody should have easy tools to understand the customer. In marketing and PR and branding, like that world, you should know the customer. You shouldn't have to spend $200K of budget on some brand tracker to understand how people think you're doing, right? Like it should be more accessible. And that accessibility, that broad adoption, across an organization is another thing that we're building towards. So all of that takes engineers, so we're hiring engineers.
Yeah, so you can build some best practices in and sort of unlock the research function into other departments like marketing or what have you. Okay, I love that.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. So there sounds like there's a lot of exciting things ahead. What would you say are the main challenges just before we wrap here?
The challenges for building a startup at this size is mostly building a startup. It's really hard to build a company out of scratch. I mean, it's just suddenly Michael and I, my co-founder and I, are both doers and managers. And I don't mean managers of one person. It's like managers of 10 people. And it's like suddenly, in the future, we'll be hiring leaders. And hiring the wrong leader can be really problematic, right? There's just like a lot to do right, that you have to do right to make a company work. So I think the biggest set of challenges is just building an effective, intense, high velocity startup is number one. I think number two is it's like, what do we sell against? When we talk to a customer, what's the alternative? If they don't go with us, what are they usually doing? And the answer is inertia. They are doing what they've been doing. It's nothing. It's not nothing. They're doing work every day. Like, they're running interviews on their own. They're running focus groups. They're using Qualtrics. They're using user testing. They're using the old school incumbents, and they're not getting any benefit, right, from AI. And so that's the big challenge, right, from adoption, is overcoming inertia. And for us, that looks like case studies and education, and we do a lot of webinars. We go to every live event. It's about, again, I want to be a part of pushing the industry, not just waiting for it to decide to pull, pushing the industry adoption even faster than it is today. And I think that's a big challenge to overcome.
Absolutely. Aaron Cannon is the co-founder and CEO of Outset. Aaron, thanks so much for your time today. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Head on over to LinkedIn. That's definitely where I spend a lot of my time. So come join me there and check it out.
That's wonderful. Aaron, I really appreciate you sharing some of your experiences and insights there and telling us a little bit about the company. As I said, Outset is an AI-moderated research platform and sounds like you've got a brilliant future ahead. So thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.